are phones that don't ring anymore, disconnected lines, forgotten networks, static-filled voids where voices used to echo. But what if some of those lines were never truly cut? What if something, or someone, kept listening on the other end? And what if the silence wasn't peace, but a trap? This is the story of the whisper line. A phone line shut down decades ago, a handful of people who answered a call that should never have come, and the terrible truth they discovered, that once you hear the whispers, you never stop hearing them, and, eventually, you whisper back. Chapter 1. The First Call. The phone rang at 2:03 a.m. Liam didn't recognize the number, but the phone said it was local. The area code matched his small Pennsylvania town, where the streets rolled up by 9 p.m. and landlines were becoming antique decorations. He didn't want to answer it, but something about the sound of the ring made his skin tighten. Not like fear, but like memory. He picked it up. Hello? Nothing. Then static. Then, "We hear you, Liam." He froze. He hadn't said his name. He pulled the phone away and looked at the screen again. No caller ID, no number now, just blank. "Who is this?" he asked, heart beginning to race. The voice came again, softer, almost inside the phone rather than over it. "We heard you last night. We'll call again." Then silence. Not a click, not a tone, just a feeling, like someone was still listening. He hung up, stared at the screen, and noticed the phone's battery, full 5 seconds ago, was now drained to 1%. Chapter 2. The Dead Number. The next morning, Liam tried to call the number back. He didn't even know why. Curiosity, maybe. Denial. Or that strange pull that comes after something terrifying, the whisper that says maybe it wasn't real. The call didn't go through, not because it was disconnected, because the phone screen read, "Number does not exist." He tried again. Same result. When he Googled the area code and prefix, something strange came up. A local exchange that had been shut down in 1996. A cluster of numbers that used to belong to the county's emergency radio relay tower, long since decommissioned. The nickname for it, according to a forgotten forum thread, the Whisper Line. Chapter 3. Crossed Lines. Liam didn't sleep well the next night. The house made noises it shouldn't, soft ones, like static under the floorboards, like voices brushing against the walls. Every so often, he could have sworn he heard his name, drawn out like a question, dissolving into nothing before he could answer. No phone call came, but the tension didn't leave him. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, tracing the patterns of shadows cast by the streetlight outside. They moved, ever so slightly, like something unseen was pacing, circling. The ticking of the clock grew louder, each second hammering his nerves. At one point, he sat up abruptly, convinced he'd heard a knock at the window. But when he pulled the curtain aside, there was nothing. Just darkness, thick and expectant. The glass felt warm beneath his fingers, almost as if someone had just touched it from the other side. The air in the room felt heavy, oppressive. He tried to shake the feeling, attributing it to the stress, to the unanswered call, to the strange voice. But deep down, something told him this was only the beginning. When he checked his call log the next morning, his stomach dropped. The number was there again. Same timestamp, 2:03 a.m. missed call, but he hadn't heard it ring. Hands trembling, he checked his voicemail. There was one new message. He hit play, static, hissing. Then a voice, his own voice. "Don't pick up tomorrow night." His heart pounded in his chest. What the hell? Then another voice, underneath, whispering in a different pitch. He's almost listening. Liam dropped the phone onto the bed, backing away as if it might leap at him. The voicemail replayed, itself static, hissing his voice again. "Don't pick up tomorrow night." The whisper, "He's almost listening." This time the static lingered. Longer, and in that white noise he heard something new, breathing, slow, rhythmic, coming from both the phone and somewhere else in the room. Liam grabbed the phone and forced it off, removing the battery entirely. But the sound didn't stop. The breathing continued. He turned slowly, eyes scanning every corner of the room. Nothing. But when he stepped into the hallway, the temperature dropped. Cold air pressed against his skin, like a draft from a door left open, but every window, every lock was shut tight. He followed the sound, heart racing down the stairs, into the living room. The television was on, static, flickering. He hadn't turned it on. The remote sat untouched on the table. As he approached, the volume rose, though no one touched it. The static shifted, twisted, became words, garbled, but insistent. "He is near. Do not answer. He wants your voice." Liam lunged for the power button, killing the screen. The silence that followed was deafening. He stood there, chest heaving, trying to make sense of what just happened. His phone, now powerless, lay silent in his room, but something else had connected, and it wasn't finished. That night, as he lay in bed once more, the clock ticking relentlessly toward 2:03 a.m., Liam felt it, a shift, a pressure, and from somewhere in the walls, from deep within the wiring, a voice he hadn't heard before. Not a whisper. Growl. "You can't stop what started. You are already heard." And as his eyes snapped open in the dark, the phone, somehow reassembled, lit up beside him. 3M incoming call, unknown number. Chapter 4. Voices at the Edge. Liam sat at his desk in the dim back room of the university archives, the morning light outside doing little to dispel the lingering unease from the night before. His hands still shook faintly as he tried to focus on his work, but the words from the television, the growling voice in the walls, and that missed call haunted him like a splinter he couldn't remove. The archives were usually his sanctuary, rows upon rows of forgotten media, reel-to-reel tapes, cassette recordings, and dusty microfilms. He had spent countless hours digitizing old oral histories, listening to the faded voices of people long gone, their memories locked in magnetic strips and fragile film. But today, the quiet felt different, thicker. He couldn't stop thinking about the breathing that hadn't left even after he tore the battery from his phone, or the voice, his voice, warning himself not to answer. And beneath it, that other whisper. He's almost listening. Almost? The thought made his stomach knot. He shook his head and tried to drown it out with routine. He pulled the next box. From the shelf, labeled Miscellaneous Reels 1985-1992. He popped the lid, fingers brushing over faded labels, cracked plastic, and finally, something odd. An unlabeled reel. No index number, no date, nothing. Just a black, sticky residue clinging to the edges of the tape as though it had seeped into the plastic from something beneath. Liam hesitated. The hum of the room seemed to grow louder. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, against every instinct screaming in his head. He loaded the reel into the machine and hit play. At first, nothing but static. Then faint voices, distorted and layered, like multiple conversations bleeding into each other from far away. He leaned closer. One voice grew clearer. A woman's voice, steady but strained. "This is Dispatcher 25 on the whisper line. There's something wrong. The line won't disconnect. It keeps answering itself." Liam's breath caught. Whisper line. The same phrase from the forums he had stumbled upon in his late-night searches, a nickname for dead communication lines that never stopped transmitting. The same nickname that haunted the FCC files he had found in old FCC files about the tower. He turned up the volume. Another voice joined hers, deeper, male, almost inhuman. No one on this frequency is alive anymore. The tape hissed, and then the sound spiked, forcing Liam to rip off his headphones. His ears rang as he stopped the machine, heart pounding. But worse than the sound was the recognition. Because the second voice? It was the same one from his voicemail, the same one that said, "He's almost listening." The room suddenly felt colder. Liam stood backing away from the desk, his eyes darting to the shadows in the corners. Something about the tape felt wrong, as if it had been waiting for him, as if it knew he would find it. His mind raced. Dispatcher, 2-5. The whisper line, the tower. A warning he had read echoed in his head, about what had been buried beneath the tower, about what had been disturbed. And now that same voice was bleeding through everywhere, his phone, the TV, the tape. Suddenly, the reel-to-reel machine clicked, by itself. It started to rewind. Then it began playing again. The woman's voice returned, but this time different, slower, as if struggling. "You can't disconnect. You can't disconnect. You can't disconnect." Her words bled into a guttural sound like choking. And then, his own name. Liam. Soft. Drawn out, as if spoken right behind him. He spun around. No one. But on the wall, in the thin layer of dust that coated the shelves, something had been written with a finger. "He knows you now." Liam staggered out of the archives, gasping for air. The whispers followed, not in words, not yet, but they were closer. At the edge. Chapter 5. The third call. It came again. But this time Liam didn't hesitate. His heart pounded. But he reached for the phone with a strange calm, as if some part of him had already accepted that there was no escape. He answered on the first ring. "Hello?" The line was silent, no static, no breathing, just an emptiness so deep it felt like he could fall into it. Then, "You said you wouldn't pick up." It was his voice again, not a recording. "Liv." Liam's mouth went dry. "Who are you?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "You." Silence stretched, thick and heavy, then another voice layered underneath, not his, deeper, rougher, older. He's starting to split. The line went dead, but the phone didn't. This time it stayed warm in his hand, not like a machine, like skin, as if something had just let go of it. Liam sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the device, heart racing. The words echoed in his head, "He's starting to split." What did that mean? He set the phone down carefully, but the warmth lingered on his palm. He rubbed it against his leg, trying to wipe it away, but the sensation remained. He stood, pacing the room, trying to shake off the feeling. His reflection in the mirror caught his eye. But it wasn't quite right. The figure staring back seemed slower to move, its eyes just a shade too dark. He blinked, and it blinked with him, but for a moment, just a heartbeat, it smiled while he didn't. Liam stumbled back. The air in the room thickened, as if the walls had closed in, and then the TV turned on by itself. Static, but not loud. Soft, like a lullaby, and within the flickering screen, he saw something. A figure. Standing at the end of the hallway, still, watching. The phone buzzed in the other room, not ringing. Buzzing. A low, constant vibration. Liam turned back to the mirror. His reflection was gone. Only the room behind him, empty. But he wasn't alone. From behind, a whisper. "You answered. Now you're listening." He spun around, fists clenched. Nothing. But the door to the hallway was open now, though he was sure he had closed it, and from the darkness beyond, the same growl he had heard before. "You can't stop." "Not now." Liam stepped back, but his phone lit up again, screen glowing, words flashing. "Next call. Soon." Chapter 6. We've heard you too. Liam wasn't sure what pulled him to the coffee shop that day. He hadn't slept. The house felt wrong now, like it was always leaning inward, like something had slipped between the walls and was watching from the inside. So he left, wandering through the grey morning until the familiar hum of a campus cafe offered some false comfort. He sat near the back, tucked into a corner, trying to scribble notes on the tapes, on the voices, on himself. But his thoughts spiraled, tangled with the memory of the last call, the reflection that didn't quite follow. Then he heard it, a voice from the next table. A woman in her mid-30s, tense, whispering urgently into her phone. It called again last night, same time, always the same time. Liam froze. Something in her voice struck him raw, familiar. He turned slowly. "Line 3? The woman went pale, her eyes locking on his. "Yeah. How do you know that?" Her name was Maya. She worked at a nearby radio station, not the kind that played music, but one that archived old broadcasts, replayed forgotten interviews, preserved echoes. 3 nights in a row, her personal line had rung from a number the station had shut down 5 years ago. At first she thought it was a prank, until the voice used her full name, until it repeated the last thing she said to her mother, the night her mother died. Liam sat across from her, the noise of the cafe fading into a dull hum around them. "I've been getting them too," he said. She nodded slowly, reaching into her bag. A phone. Older. Scratched. She played a voicemail. Liam's breath caught. The same static. The same voice. His voice. But her words. They compared recordings. Different phrases. Different memories. But underneath, layered in the static, something the same. A second layer. Not quite human. Not quite machine. A whisper threading through every call. They played the voicemails side by side, and the whispers synced. Perfectly. Together. "We come through." Maya's hands shook. "What does it want?" Liam didn't have an answer, but the phones buzzed in unison on the table. 3 p.m. And across the screen of both devices, "You've heard us. We've heard you too." Chapter 7. Holes in the tape. Back at the archives, Liam pulled the old reel from before, but now it had a label scratched into the metal. Return frequency. He hadn't written that. No one else had access. He loaded it again. The voice came on sooner this time. "Dispatcher 2-5, signal is looping." Voices are stacking. They're not calls. They're shadows. Then silence. Then a new voice. The same whisper as before. "The more who listen, the more we can speak." Liam checked the timer on the reel. It was blank. No time code. No movement. But the audio kept playing, and in the background of the recording, he heard a phone ringing. Not on the tape. In the room. Chapter 8. Origin Point. Maya had found it deep in the FCC archives, a forgotten emergency broadcast relay station commissioned in 1983 as part of a Cold War project. It was built as a hardened communication node, capable of surviving nuclear fallout, designed to connect 3 counties during emergencies. But the files she uncovered detailed its grim end. In March 1996, after a series of bizarre incidents, the relay tower was abruptly shut down. 3 technicians had been found dead inside the main control room. According to the autopsies, their deaths had resulted from sudden, catastrophic brain hemorrhages, caused by an unknown source of intense acoustic pressure. No physical injuries were observed, except for trails of blood streaming from their ears and noses, their faces locked forever in twisted masks of terror. An internal memo buried within the files contained the final entry from one technician's logbook. The relay won't disconnect. It's like it's listening back. There's someone, something answering us. But there was something Maya hadn't seen before. A sealed file. Stamped red. Site contamination. Cultural warning. She opened it, and what she read chilled her more than the deaths. The land where the tower was built was once sacred, a native burial ground dating back over 1,000 years. Tribal elders had warned that the site was never meant to be disturbed. The land was not just spiritually significant, it was protected in silence. Any attempt to break that silence would awaken something beneath. The documents noted that during excavation, workers uncovered hundreds of skeletal remains, some arranged in patterns that no one could explain, symbols carved into the earth. Circles burned into the roots of trees, every warning ignored, every protest silenced. And when the tower began broadcasting, the silence ended. The spirits below listened, and they did not forgive. The forgotten road leading to the tower cut jaggedly through the forest like a wound that refused to heal. Liam and Maya drove in near silence. Even before the tower came into view, the air felt oppressive, as if 1,000 invisible eyes were tracking their movement through the trees. The tower loomed suddenly ahead, stark and skeletal, rusted metal, spires piercing the gloomy sky. A corroded chain-link fence encircled it, bent and twisted as though something had desperately tried to escape. Or worse, had been dragged inside. Stepping carefully through the broken fence, they approached the tower's front door. It was steel, weathered and warped, with a heavy padlock twisted grotesquely, as if melted by tremendous heat. Maya placed her hand on the knob, recoiling at once. It wasn't just cold, it pulsed beneath her fingertips, almost as though it was breathing. Without warning, the door swung inward, opening into pitch darkness. Inside, the stale air felt thick, heavy with a coppery scent, blood or burnt circuits. The corridor stretched ahead, illuminated only by Liam's flickering flashlight, its beam barely piercing the shadows. The walls hummed softly, vibrating at a frequency that crawled beneath their skin. As they moved deeper, the building changed. The concrete walls turned smooth, slick with a black, oily residue. They passed empty rooms with disconnected phone cords hanging lifelessly from the ceilings, swaying gently as if pushed by unseen hands. One cord tightened suddenly, jerking violently as they passed, sending them both staggering backward. At the end of the corridor stood a stairway leading downward, contradicting the original blueprint they'd studied, which indicated a single-level facility. Unable to turn back now, they descended, each step groaning painfully beneath their feet. Below, they found a heavy door labeled Reception, Frequency Anchor. Above it, a single red indicator pulsed rhythmically, alive and waiting. The door opened effortlessly, as though expecting them. Inside was the relay control room, a circular chamber filled with humming analog equipment, alive with faintly flickering red lights. In the room's center stood an old rotary desk phone, its receiver placed delicately on the edge of the console. Beside it lay a spiral notebook, its pages filled with frantic writing. "We are only echoes now. We are only echoes now. We are only echoes now." The handwriting trailed off the page, continuing onto the console itself, etched deeply into its surface. Liam picked up the receiver. It felt warm and slick in his hand, almost organic. He placed it to his ear. Silence, then breathing, then a low, rasping whisper, impossibly close. "We hear you now." The phone rang, its shrill bell echoing painfully throughout the room. Once, twice, 13 times. Chapter 9. Return Frequency. The tower didn't leave them. Even after they walked away, even after the road behind them disappeared into the thick woods, something followed. The silence wasn't silence anymore, it was waiting. Liam couldn't shake the feeling. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that red light pulsing above the door. Reception. Frequency anchor. It flashed behind his eyelids, even in the daylight, and the voice. "We hear you now." It echoed, not just in his mind, but in everything. Back home, he found Maya pacing. She hadn't said much since they left the tower. Her eyes stayed distant, locked on corners of the room like she was watching something crawl just out of view. "It didn't end there," she finally said. "We brought it with us." Liam sat heavily on the couch, running his hands through his hair. "That place, it knew us." Maya nodded. "I keep hearing it. The breathing. In the wires." She turned on the faucet in the kitchen, and for a moment, instead of water, there was static. Just a hiss, long and low, before the water came rushing out. Liam flinched. "It's in everything now," he whispered. That night, the dreams came. Liam stood in the tower again, alone. But it wasn't abandoned. The walls moved, pulsing like lungs. The cords hanging from the ceiling writhed like snakes. And the phones, they weren't dead. They rang in unison. He picked one up, and instead of a voice, a face stared back from inside the receiver, hollow-eyed, mouth stretched impossibly wide. "You let us out." He woke, gasping, drenched in sweat. The clock read 2:03 a.m. His phone lay next to him, screen on, a message flashing, "Return frequency established, incoming transmission." He didn't touch it, but the screen stayed lit and the hum in. The walls grew louder. Maya didn't answer her phone the next day. When he knocked at her door, it was ajar. Inside, her apartment was cold. Her laptop sat open, a looped video playing over and over, the control room, the red light blinking, the receiver off the hook, and scrawled across the walls, written in something dark and wet, "We are through." Liam stumbled back, eyes wide, as his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He pulled it out. Unknown number 2:03 p.m. He didn't answer, but the phone didn't stop, and outside the sky darkened, though the sun still hung high. Chapter 10. The place that remembers you. Liam's skin still crawled from the night before. The vision of the corridor wouldn't leave him. The screaming phones, the static like boiling oil pouring into his ears. It wasn't sleep, it wasn't waking, it was something in between. Every creak of the house sounded like a distant ring. Every hum of electronics felt like breathing, and the feeling wasn't just fear anymore. It was recognition. He had to know more. That day, he returned to the university archives, hands still trembling. He couldn't explain it. But something inside him whispered that the tower wasn't just in the world now. It was inside them. Inside him. As he flipped through the blueprints again, something clicked in his mind. The corridor from his vision. The one lined with phones, each screaming for his attention, wasn't just a hallucination, it was real. It matched the relay station, exactly, even the positions of the phones. Even the color of the walls, even the pedestal with the red rotary. "It's not just remembering us," Liam whispered. "We're remembering it." That evening, Maya called him. Her voice was hoarse. "I need to see you." They met at the edge of the woods. Maya sat in her car, parked where the trees began to thicken. Her face was pale, her eyes bloodshot. Liam climbed into the passenger seat and silence stretched between them. "You look terrible," he said. She gave a hollow laugh. "I didn't sleep. I was there too, in the tower. It wouldn't let me go." He stared at her. Same hallway, same phones, same smell. But it wasn't just in my head. She leaned back and reached into the back seat, pulling out a Ziploc bag. Inside, a scrap of torn black cable, frayed, dripping with dark oil. "I found this in my bed," she said. My boots were soaked. Liam felt the blood drain from his face. They sat in silence. Then, as if on cue, they both looked at the woods. The tower called them. They returned just before dusk. The forest seemed tighter, the trees leaning in, whispering. The tower loomed like a spine from the earth, sharp and rotted, silhouetted against a sky tinged with sickly yellow. They entered without a word. Inside, the air was different, heavier, worse, alive. Every step felt like it echoed into something, like the walls were listening. The hum wasn't background noise anymore. It was a heartbeat. The hallway had changed, not physically, but the smell. Burnt plastic, stale meat, blood. The descent felt longer this time, as if the tower itself had grown. As they reached the bottom, the red light above the door greeted them. Reception, frequency, anchor. The door opened before they touched it. Inside, the control room was darker, deeper. The machines hummed louder, wires twitching faintly. The phone was still there, but it looked older, blackened, like it had been burned. Liam stepped forward, heart hammering. On the wall, fresh scratches. "We are through. We remember you." Maya froze. New object rested on the console, an audio reel, old, unlabeled. She reached out, and the moment her fingers brushed it, it began to spin, slow, deliberate. There was no player, but a voice filled the room. Her voice. "We were never meant to hear it. We were only ever meant to carry it." Liam stared at her. Maya shook her head, tears forming. "That's not me. That wasn't me." Then a second voice. Low, gravelly, inhuman. "The more who listen, the more we can speak." Silence. Then, beneath the floorboards, breathing. Wet, slow, hungry. The phone rang once, twice, 13 times, and this time, they knew. It was no longer just the tower. It was them. Chapter 11. Missing Hours. Liam woke up in the library archive room. The lights were off. His laptop was open, humming quietly. The clock said 3:48 a.m. He had no memory of how he got there. He'd last checked the time at 10:16 p.m., over 5 hours. Gone. His phone was beside him, screen black, warm to the touch. He checked the call log, one outgoing call. 3 a.m., to the same number. He hadn't made the call, or he didn't remember making it. When he met with Maya later, her eyes were red. "I lost time too," she said. "I came to in the bathroom. No idea how I got there. The faucet was running. My hands were shaking." She held up her phone. Voicemail. They listened together. Her voice. They're not just calling anymore. They're starting to write. Chapter 12. Call and response. They set up a recorder in the tower, left the receiver off the hook, let it run for 24 hours. When they returned, the room was cold, unnaturally so, and the tape? Still recording, still receiving. When they played it back, it began normally. Then, at 2:03 a.m., the static changed. Rhythmic, intentional, almost like breathing. Then, do you want to know why it chose you? Because you listened. Because you stayed. Because you believed. Then Maya's voice, recorded live, but she had never been there. Once you answer, you become a line too. Chapter 13. Repeater. Liam started noticing phrases on sticky notes around his apartment, none written in his handwriting. Do not pick up twice. Repeaters become reception. They use your voice to find others. He checked his call history. Again. There were 3 outgoing calls made between 1-3 a.m. over the last 4 nights. 3 different numbers, local, and under each number, connected Maya called in the middle of the day, shaken. Someone I know got a call last night. A friend I haven't spoken to in years. He said, he heard my voice. He said I was whispering from inside the line. Liam didn't speak. He was staring at his phone screen because someone was calling him right now, and the name on the screen was Maya. Chapter 14. Maya disconnected. Liam didn't answer the call, not at first. He stared at the screen, Maya's name glowing against the black, but she had just told him she hadn't called. And when he picked up, silence. Then her voice, "I'm almost through the door. Don't follow me yet. They remember you, Liam. They never forgot." Then a long, wet click, like something uncoiling through wire. He tried to call her back. The line rang once. Then, "This number has been disconnected." He drove to her apartment, lights off, mail piling up, no answer. Maya was gone. Chapter 15. The New Frequencies. That night, Liam didn't sleep. At 2:03 a.m. he waited. The phone didn't ring, but the TV turned on by itself in just static. The speakers hissed, then, "You let her speak too long." He unplugged the TV. The sound continued, from the kitchen radio, batteryless, from the vents in the floor, from the faucet as it ran. The whispering had moved, no longer confined to the phone. He had become a receiver. He tried to scream, but his voice came out delayed, echoing back to him 3 seconds after his mouth moved, a perfect, haunting mimic. Chapter 16. The Voices in Everything. Everywhere he went, he began to hear them, in the buzzing of lights, in the pause between songs, in strangers' voices when they turned away. The whisper line had moved into the world, and Liam wasn't just listening anymore, he was transmitting. At the grocery store, a woman touched his arm. "I heard you," she whispered. He pulled back. "What?" "Last night, in my vent. You said not to answer." He shook his head. "I didn't." "Yes, you did," she smiled. "You sounded scared." Then she walked away, and every aisle speaker began to softly hum his name. Chapter 17. Inside the Tower. Liam returned to the tower alone. Fog clung to the trees like damp skin. The path looked different, longer, curved where it used to be straight. The building was colder now. Not weather cold, signal cold. Inside, the switchboard lights blinked randomly, even though no power had been restored. The analog equipment was humming like a hive of insects. He stepped into the operator's room. Maya's notebook was on the desk, open, her last entry. "He's not calling anymore. He's answering. And I think it's me." On the wall, scratched deeply into the paint, "You are not just listening, you are remembering." Chapter 18. The Glitch in the Glass. Liam stared at the bathroom mirror, heart beating unevenly. The room was still, silent, but the silence was wrong, not peaceful. It was anticipating. He leaned in. His breath fogged the glass, and his reflection didn't move, not a blink, not a twitch, just stillness. Then, with a slow, unnatural delay, the reflection smiled, a thin, crooked curve of the lips. Too slow, too deliberate. Liam stepped back instinctively, eyes wide. The reflection did not. It stayed exactly where it was, head tilted, smiling wider. Then it moved. Fast. A sudden jerking, twitch as the head snapped to the side, bones cracking as if joints didn't belong where they were. The jaw opened, but no sound came out. Only blood began leaking from its mouth, thick, black and slow. It smeared against the inside of the mirror like oil. Liam gasped and stumbled back into the wall, breath ragged, eyes darting for escape. But he couldn't look away. The reflection raised a finger to its lips. "Shh." Then it whispered with Liam's own voice, but layered deeper, wrong. "You're not seeing your reflection. You're seeing the next version of yourself. The one that listens better, The lights above flickered violently. The mirror rippled like it was water under pressure. Suddenly, Liam felt a presence behind him, breathing on his neck. He spun. Nothing. He looked back at the mirror. But now, there were multiple reflections, all of them versions of himself, all of them staring, bleeding, smiling. "Choose who you want to become," they said in unison. "We've all answered the call. Now it's your turn to whisper back." The light bulb above shattered. The mirror cracked, and all the reflections began screaming in silence, mouths open, eyes weeping black, until the only one left was him, but with black eyes, smiling and whispering, "Soon, they won't know which one of us is real." Chapter 19. Through the receiver. He called it. The dial tone didn't ring. Instead, he heard footsteps. Wood creaking. Breathing. Then, Maya's voice. "Don't trust what you see. The whisper line isn't a signal. It's a memory trying to reach itself again, and it's using us to do it." He tried to speak, but the phone hissed, loud and wet, and then he was standing somewhere else, still holding the phone, still mid-call, but now in a room with no walls, just static, and the silhouettes of phones hanging from invisible cords, all of them ringing, all of them calling him. Chapter 20. The signal of self. Liam stood in the nowhere room. Phones hung in mid-air, some old, some new, some cracked, some pulsing with faint red light. Each one rang at a different rhythm, like 1,000 heartbeats trying to sync. He answered. "One. Hello?" No voice. Just his own thoughts repeated back to him. Why didn't I stop this? What was I trying to remember? What if I've already answered? He dropped the phone. It kept ringing. Every other phone matched its tone. And then the static cleared. And one of the voices said, "Welcome back." Chapter 21. Maya, fragmented. He found her, not standing, not whole, just her voice disembodied, echoing across different receivers. One whispered her name. One repeated the phrase she said when she was scared as a child. One said, "I didn't mean to open the gate." He grabbed a rotary phone. Her voice came through. Calm. "Liam, we're not people in here. We're recordings, layers, loops. We're what the whisper line plays when it wants others to listen." He felt a tear on his cheek. Not from sadness, from static. It bled grey. "What's happening to us?" he asked. "It's building something," she said, "piece by piece. Listener by listener, word by word. Building what? Itself." Chapter 22. The voice beneath all others. Somewhere deeper than the signal, a new voice emerged. It wasn't one he'd heard before. Not Maya. Not himself. Not the collector of old echoes. It was older, deeper. It didn't whisper. It pressed into the mind. "You were mine before the wire. You spoke before your mouth knew how. Every word you've ever said came from me first." Liam collapsed, tried to cover his ears, but the sound was inside him. The voice was speaking from his bones. "I am the first call," it said, "and the last." Chapter 23. Speech without permission. Liam couldn't speak anymore, or rather, he could, but not as himself. Sometimes he would begin a sentence and feel his throat resist. Other times, words poured out in strange tones, languages, names he didn't know. Once, he opened his mouth to scream, and instead whispered. Frequency. Stabilized. Begin relay. At the diner, a stranger locked eyes with him and said, "You told me where to dig." Liam didn't respond. The man smiled. "Thanks," and left behind a small charred phone receiver, broken off the cord, still warm. Chapter 24. Maya's key. She returned at 2:03 a.m., not through a door, Not through the phone, through the radio static in his apartment. He turned every device off. Still she came. "Liam," she said, "we don't have much time." She flickered in and out, like bad reception. There's a moment before it locks in, before the signal takes over completely. They call it the narrowband. You can slip through it, unheard, unseen. But it costs something. It costs what made them call you in the first place. The part of you that remembers before the whisper. Chapter 25, The Memory Sacrifice. He asked her, "What does that mean?" She hesitated. "It means your anchor, the moment in your life you never speak about, because it's too painful, too personal, too real. That's what they hook to. You let go of it. You sever the line." Liam tried to think. His mind fuzzed. He couldn't remember his brother's name, his childhood bedroom, his mother's voice. Everything was slipping, but one image burned in, a red rotary phone, a dark basement, and someone on the line, sobbing his name. He didn't know if it was real or planted, but the voice whispered again, "To stop hearing us, you have to forget why we called you at all." Chapter 26, The Narrowband. He followed Maya's instructions. At 2:03 a.m. he sat in the tower, the receiver resting in his lap. No electricity, no signal, just intention. She said to listen for the drop, the split-second dip in sound between the whisper's loop and the call's arrival. It wasn't silence. It was negative space, a crack between tones. He heard it. It wasn't heard with ears. It was felt in teeth. He whispered his name into the void, and the world fell sideways. Chapter 27, Relay of the Self. The narrowband wasn't a place, it was a layer, a corridor beneath time, where voices bled together, where you could hear things before they were said. Liam stood there, body intact, mind flickering. In front of him, himself, but older. Pallid mouth twitching like a skipping record. This version spoke on repeat. "Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Do you hear me?" Liam stepped closer. The echo stopped. "I've said this before," the other Liam said, "hundreds of times. You're the latest me. We all make it here eventually. Most don't leave. Why? Because we already answered." Chapter 28, Room of the Ringing. The corridor collapsed. Liam fell into a room, massive, endless, dimly lit by thousands of phones suspended in black space, each one ringing, each with a small plaque below the receiver. Jonah, received Claire, repeat unknown. In progress, Liam, listening one. Phone was glowing red. He picked it up, the voice on the other end. "You don't escape the whisper line. You become one of its stories. And someone, somewhere, is listening to yours now." Chapter 29, Maya's line. He found her phone. Hers was the only one not ringing. It was humming, softly, a low frequency that vibrated in his teeth, in his spine, in his memory. The plaque below it read, "Maya." Yoon answered. He lifted the receiver. No ring, no hiss, just breathing. Then her voice, faint, frayed at the edges. "I tried to cut the line, but it's not a wire, Liam. It's attention. They call through interest. They speak through curiosity. Every person who listens becomes a piece of the next signal, and I'm part of it now. If you're still listening, it's already begun." Chapter 30, The Story of Her Voice. She explained everything, not in words but in tone. Liam began to see it. The whisper line didn't pass through cables. It passed through retellings, through voicemail shares, through forwarded clips, through horror. Forums, through someone saying, "Have you heard about this weird phone thing?" Through YouTube comments, through stories. Every time someone shared a detail, even in disbelief, the line spread. Not as a rumor, but as a signal looking for new receivers. "You can't hang up," Maya said. "Not anymore. But you can end the story. You can refuse to be retold. But to do that, someone has to listen all the way through." Chapter 31. You are the final receiver. Liam opened his eyes. He was back in the tower. The receiver was off the hook. His phone was recording. It had been for hours. But not just sound. Video, streaming, uploading, and people had been watching. The whisper line was no longer just calling him, it was using him. The comments below the live stream were filled with timestamps and questions. "What's that voice at 2:03:17? Did anyone else hear their own name? I swear I just got a call with that same tone. This isn't a story, right? And somewhere you, the viewer, are still watching, still reading, still listening. And the whisper line, it knows your name now too." Chapter 32. The Silence Protocol. Liam shut everything off. Not just the lights, not just the screens. He ripped cords from outlets, yanked batteries from remotes, flipped breakers one by one. As the electricity drained from the apartment, the shadows grew bold, stretching, crawling, pressing inward. There was no more signal, but he could still feel it. The whisper line didn't need wires anymore. It had him. The tower had been a door. His attention had been the key, and now he wasn't sure if he was inside the signal, or if the signal was inside him. He sat cross-legged on the floor, in the dead center of the apartment. Around him, relics of normalcy. A framed photo of his brother. A book his mother used to read to him. A pair of headphones that hadn't worked. In weeks, they were all cold, muted, as if they'd been forgotten by the world. His phone was the only thing still powered, lying face down. Not ringing. Not yet. He stared at it, the way one might stare at a loaded gun. He wanted to scream, to cry, to call someone and beg for a way out, but his voice was already half borrowed. He felt the pressure build behind his eyes. The room grew tighter. Walls, whispering in electric tones he could almost understand. Then the screen lit up. No ringtone, no vibrations, just a single flashing notification. Silence protocol initiated. His mouth went dry. The whisper line had never issued commands before. Until now. The lights flickered back on, briefly, without power. Every bulb in the apartment glowed red for 3 seconds. Then black. Liam picked up the phone. It was warm, throbbing like a living thing. On the screen, remember. A second later, forget. And beneath both, a timer began to count down. In seconds. If I choose remember, I keep the voices. If I choose forget. He didn't know. Would he forget everything, or would the line forget him? He looked up. The walls were bleeding static. The mirror in the hallway warped. No reflection. The vent whispered his name in reverse. Seconds. He thought of Maya, of the others, of everyone who ever answered the call and didn't make it back. Could he break the chain? Could he silence the whisper? He closed his eyes. Tears streamed down his cheeks. And then he whispered one word. Not into the phone, into the silence. No. The timer stopped. The phone powered down, and outside his window the shadows peeled away. A final message blinked across the screen before it died. You were heard. Liam sat in the quiet, the real quiet, the kind that couldn't be hijacked, the kind that didn't echo, and for the first time in weeks, there was no ringing, only breath. His own, still his. For now. Chapter 33. The Unwritten Ending. The quiet held. But not for long. Liam stared at the black screen of his phone, now cold in his palm. The timer was gone. The voices were gone. No whispers behind his walls, no clicks from the vents, no dreams made of wires. And yet something inside him shifted. Not fear, not relief, emptiness. He had told the line no, but he didn't know what else he had given up to say it. As the night dragged on, the silence grew heavier, not peaceful, expectant. His mind wandered to the others who had heard the call. Jonah, Claire, Maya. Were they silenced too? Were they free? Or had they vanished beneath the static, buried in frequencies that still pulsed, waiting for someone to remember them? He stood and walked through the apartment. Everything looked the same, but felt flattened, like the room had been printed onto reality, like he was walking through a paused video. His reflection still didn't return in the mirror. But something new had taken its place. Words faintly etched into the glass. You chose to forget, but they won't. A cold wind pressed against the window, and for a second he swore he heard it again, a faint, distant ring, not in the apartment, in his memory, and elsewhere in a different room someone sat alone, scrolling through a story they weren't supposed to read. They didn't know Liam, didn't know Maya, didn't believe in towers or signals, or ghosts made of static. But they had kept reading, and that's how the line finds its way back. Not through calls, not through wires, through attention, and now that you've heard it, it's your move. Chapter 34. Disconnect or deliver. You made it this far. That means something. It means you didn't look away when Liam started to disappear. You didn't close the story when Maya's voice bled through your screen. You didn't silence the signal. You invited it. And the whisper line? It noticed. You didn't just hear the story. You listened, and that's all it ever needed. You may think it's over, because the screen is dark, the voices are gone, and Liam whispered no. But that's not how the line ends. It doesn't stop, because one person resists. It waits. It waits for you. Check your phone. You may already have. A phantom buzz, a missed call from a number you don't recognize, a voicemail you can't replay. Check the mirror. Look long enough, and your reflection might hesitate before you do. It might lean closer. It might smile. Check your room tonight. Listen for the faint hum in the walls, for the breath behind the vent, or worse, for the knock. 3. Soft taps. Measured, polite. You don't need to answer, but you already did, because somewhere beneath the silence, something ancient smiles when you speak. Something forgotten hears your heartbeat. And it is not human. It never was. Chapter 35. The final disconnect. Somewhere a room remains hidden from the world, dark, windowless, lined with rotary phones, each one assigned to a name long forgotten. A single one glows red. Liam's name has faded, not erased. Not crossed out, just dimmed. Beside it, a new slot begins to carve itself. The plaque is blank, but the cord is already connected. The phone begins to ring. Once, twice. It waits for a new voice to pick up. Not a character, not a narrator. A reader, a listener. You, and, on the other end of the line, not a whisper, not a voice, a sound. Teeth, gnashing, wet, close, waiting to bite through your silence. Chapter 36. The last call. Your eyes are still here. Your mind followed every chapter. You walked through the corridor. You heard the tower hum. You felt the signal reach out, and now it has reached you. The whisper line isn't a story. It's a frequency, made of attention. Every moment you spent here gave it more shape. Every pause, every heartbeat. You let it in, but it's not too late. You can still disconnect. Right now, close the tab, turn away, but understand, when the tower opens again, it won't be a place, it will be a mouth, and every story you share becomes its tongue. Or you can pick up the phone, repeat what you've learned, share it, and the cycle begins again, because it was never about hearing, it was about feeding. Chapter 7. The Invitation of Silence. The whisper line survives not by wires, not by sound, not by tech. It survives in stories, in the minds of those who carry its echo, and now that echo is yours. It lives in your memory, in the flicker of your screen, in the pause between your thoughts. This was not a call for help. It was an invitation to speak, to repeat, to become the next link. But if you choose not to, if you choose to walk away, then the silence holds, and maybe, just maybe, it ends with you. But if you speak of this, if you share this, if you forward it, quote it, whisper it at 2:03 a.m., then it continues, and someone else will hear the knock, and when they answer,